A wealthy CEO discovers a ragged man sleeping on a park bench, giving away the only meal he has to a frightened little girl. What happens next is unbelievable. No one noticed the man until that moment. To everyone rushing through the busy downtown streets, he was just another face hidden beneath an old gray hoodie, another pair of worn-out shoes dragging across cracked sidewalks, another person people avoided making eye contact with. But that morning, everything changed. The little girl clutched her stomach, tears streaming down her cheeks as she whispered, "I'm so hungry." Without hesitation, the man smiled. Then he handed her the untouched sandwich someone had given him only minutes earlier. He didn't even take a single bite. What nobody knew was that this homeless man had a secret that would leave an entire city speechless. Every morning before sunrise, Daniel Brooks folded the thin blanket he slept under behind an abandoned bus station. He believed in leaving every place cleaner than he found it, even if nobody noticed. He washed his face using water from the public restroom sink, carefully combed his graying hair with a tiny plastic comb missing 3 teeth, and buttoned the same faded blue shirt he had worn for nearly 2 years. It had been stitched together so many times it looked like a patchwork quilt. Still, Daniel stood tall. His shoulders never slumped. His smile never disappeared. Every person he passed received the same greeting. "Good morning. I hope today brings you peace." Some ignored him. Some looked away. Others muttered insults. But Daniel never stopped wishing strangers well. Around 8 every morning, he arrived outside Harper's Cafe. The owner, Mrs. Lewis, always greeted him warmly. "Morning, Daniel." "Morning, Martha." She slid yesterday's leftover bread across the counter. "Not much today." Daniel smiled. "It's more than enough." She often wondered why he was never desperate, never angry, never bitter. Instead of eating immediately, Daniel walked toward the city park. There, he fed the pigeons first. "Everyone deserves breakfast," he whispered. Only after every crumb had been shared would he eat what remained. Sometimes, there wasn't anything left. Most people assumed Daniel had always been poor. They assumed he had made bad choices. They assumed he had nowhere to go. They were wrong. Very wrong. Daniel carried something inside his worn leather backpack that was worth far more than anything money could buy. Not gold, not cash, not expensive jewelry. Something much greater. Yet he never told anyone. Because some treasures reveal themselves only when the time is right. Every afternoon, Daniel visited the city library. He never checked out books. Instead, he repaired damaged ones. Quietly, without permission. If he noticed torn pages, he'd tape them together. Loose bindings? He fixed them. Bent covers? He straightened them carefully. The librarians eventually stopped asking questions. One even whispered, "He takes better care of these books than most employees." Children loved sitting beside him. Whenever someone struggled with homework, Daniel patiently explained math problems, science projects, or history lessons with surprising ease. "You used to be a teacher?" one boy once asked. Daniel simply smiled. "I've always loved learning." The answer was true. Just not the whole truth. Late that afternoon, storm clouds rolled across the city skyline. Rain began falling hard. People rushed for shelter. Cars splashed through puddles. Umbrellas collided on crowded sidewalks. Daniel spotted something across the street. A young mother frantically searched inside her empty purse while holding the hand of a little girl no older than 6. "I don't have enough," the mother whispered to the food vendor. "I'm sorry." The vendor shook his head apologetically. "I can't give food away." The little girl lowered her head. "It's okay, Mommy." Daniel reached inside his paper bag. One sandwich. His only meal. He walked over. "Excuse me." The mother immediately stepped back, nervous. Daniel held out the sandwich. "I think someone needs this more than I do." The little girl looked up with wide eyes. "Really?" Daniel nodded. "I've already been blessed today." That wasn't exactly true. But seeing the child smile, that was blessing enough. The little girl hugged him before taking the sandwich. Her mother fought back tears. "I don't know how to thank you. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "When life becomes kinder to you." Daniel smiled softly. "Pass that kindness to someone else." Neither of them noticed the black luxury sedan stopped across the street. Inside sat Ethan Carter, founder of one of the country's largest technology companies. A billionaire known for his sharp business instincts and for trusting almost no one. He had been heading to an important board meeting. Instead, he found himself staring through the rain-covered window at a man who had absolutely nothing. yet had just given away everything he had. For the first time in years, Ethan canceled his meeting. He opened the car door, stepped into the rain, and began walking toward the mysterious man everyone believed was simply homeless. Little did Ethan know, meeting Daniel Brooks would become the most important decision of his entire life. Before we continue with this incredible journey, I spent countless hours researching and crafting this story to bring you something truly meaningful. If stories like this touch your heart and you want to see more acts of kindness that restore faith in humanity, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Now, let's see what happens next. Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness that completely changed your perspective? Share your story in the comments below. The rain continued pouring as Ethan Carter crossed the busy street. His polished leather shoes splashed through muddy puddles, something that would have irritated him on any other day. Today, he didn't seem to notice. His eyes stayed fixed on Daniel. The old man was already walking away after giving up his only meal, as if sacrificing his lunch for a stranger was the most ordinary thing in the world. Ethan, his driver called from the sedan. The board meeting starts in 20 minutes. Ethan didn't even turn around. It can wait. The driver blinked. In 12 years of working for Ethan Carter, he had never heard those words. Never. Daniel reached the entrance of the city park just as Ethan caught up with him. "Excuse me, sir." Daniel turned slowly. His kind eyes met Ethan's expensive tailored suit. He smiled politely. "Good afternoon." Ethan hesitated. He had negotiated billion-dollar contracts without breaking a sweat. Yet somehow, starting a conversation with this humble stranger felt strangely difficult. "I saw what you did back there." Daniel looked toward the food stand and shrugged. "The little girl was hungry. But that was your lunch." Daniel chuckled softly. "It was only a sandwich. It was all you had." For a brief moment, silence settled between them. Then Daniel looked at the gray sky. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "having little teaches you how precious every blessing really is." The words lingered in Ethan's mind. His entire career had been built on acquiring more. More companies, more profits, more influence. Yet he couldn't remember the last time he had truly appreciated what he already had. "I'm Ethan." Daniel extended his hand without hesitation. Daniel. His handshake was firm, confident, not the handshake Ethan expected from someone living on the streets. "You don't seem surprised to meet me," Ethan observed. Daniel smiled. "Should I be? You know who I am. I've seen your picture in newspapers." And Daniel shrugged again. "You're a man." Ethan laughed unexpectedly. Most people treated him like a celebrity. Others treated him like an opportunity. Daniel treated him like another human being. It was refreshing. "I'd like to buy you lunch." Daniel shook his head gently. "That's kind of you, but I'm all right. You gave yours away." "I know. So you're hungry." Daniel smiled. "Hunger passes." Ethan frowned. "I insist." Daniel studied him for a moment. Finally, he nodded. "Only if you let me choose the restaurant." Ethan smiled. "Deal." 10 minutes later, they walked into a small family-owned diner tucked between two aging buildings. It certainly wasn't the type of place Ethan usually visited. The waitress nearly dropped her notepad when she recognized him. "Mr. Carter?" He smiled. "Today I'm just Ethan." She glanced nervously at Daniel before leading them to a booth. Several customers stared. A billionaire sitting beside a man everyone assumed was homeless. Whispers spread across the room. "What is he doing? Is this some publicity stunt? Maybe they're filming something." Daniel ignored every curious glance. When the waitress returned, Ethan ordered one of the most expensive meals on the menu. Daniel ordered vegetable soup. "And some bread," he added. "That's all?" Ethan asked. Daniel nodded. "It's enough." When the meals arrived, Ethan noticed something unusual. Daniel broke the bread into 4 equal pieces. He ate one, wrapped 2 carefully inside a napkin, and left one untouched. "You saving it?" Daniel smiled. "There are 2 veterans near the train station. You know them?" "I know they're hungry." Ethan stared at him in disbelief. Even after receiving a free meal, Daniel was already planning to share it. "You really think differently than most people." Daniel looked thoughtful. "Kindness grows best when it's shared." Ethan leaned forward. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You may." "How did you end up living like this?" Daniel remained silent for several long seconds. "I made a promise." "A promise?" "To someone I loved." "What kind of promise?" Daniel's eyes drifted toward the rain sliding down the restaurant window. that I'd never allow bitterness to decide who I became. Ethan sensed there was much more to the story, but he also sensed Daniel wasn't ready. So he changed the subject. What did you do before? Daniel smiled mysteriously. A little of everything. I don't believe that. You shouldn't believe everything people tell you. Ethan laughed again. You know, you're difficult to figure out. So I've been told. When lunch ended, Ethan reached for the check. Daniel quietly placed several neatly folded dollar bills on the table. Ethan stared. You're paying? For my soup. You don't have to. I know. Then why? Daniel looked almost offended. Because gratitude doesn't mean giving up dignity. Those words struck Ethan harder than any business lesson he'd ever learned. Daniel wasn't asking for charity. He wasn't looking for pity. He simply accepted kindness while still contributing what he could. Outside the diner, the rain had finally stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds. The wet streets shimmered like glass. As they walked together, a loud cry suddenly echoed from across the road. My bag! An elderly woman pointed in panic as a teenage thief sprinted away with her purse. Without thinking, Daniel dropped his backpack. Despite his age, he ran. Fast. Much faster than Ethan expected. The thief darted through pedestrians, knocking people aside. Daniel never gave up. Instead of trying to tackle the boy, he took a shortcut through a narrow alley. Seconds later, he appeared directly in front of the frightened teenager. The boy froze. Daniel raised both hands calmly. I'm not here to hurt you. The teenager looked around desperately. Move. Daniel shook his head. You still have time to make a better choice. The boy's breathing grew heavier. Then something unexpected happened. He burst into tears. I didn't know what else to do. Daniel's voice remained gentle. What's your name? Marcus. When was the last time someone asked if you were okay, Marcus? The teenager couldn't answer. Instead, he slowly handed over the purse. Daniel smiled. Thank you. No shouting. No violence. No humiliation. Just compassion. Ethan had witnessed thousands of people solve problems with power. Daniel solved one with understanding. As the grateful elderly woman hugged Daniel with tears in her eyes, Ethan realized this was no ordinary man. There was wisdom behind those tired eyes, discipline behind those worn clothes, and a past hidden beneath every quiet smile. For the first time in years, Ethan found himself wanting to know someone's story, not because of what they owned, but because of who they were. Little did he know, Daniel's greatest secret was still waiting to be revealed. The following morning, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Daniel. During an executive meeting, while board members debated quarterly profits and expansion plans, Ethan found himself staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows of the company's headquarters. Mr. Carter? His chief financial officer repeated the question. Ethan blinked. I'm sorry. Could you say that again? Around the table, several executives exchanged puzzled glances. This wasn't like him. Normally, Ethan noticed every detail, every number, every opportunity. But today, his thoughts kept returning to a man who owned almost nothing, yet carried himself with more peace than many millionaires. When the meeting finally ended, Ethan canceled the rest of his appointments. His assistant looked shocked. You have 3 investor calls this afternoon. They can wait. And dinner with the governor? Reschedule it. Instead, Ethan drove back to the city library. Something told him Daniel would be there. He was right. Daniel sat at a wooden table surrounded by 4 children. One little boy struggled with a complicated math problem, frustration written all over his face. I can't do it. Daniel smiled patiently. You can't do it yet. He picked up a pencil. Tell me, if you have 3 apples and I give you 2 more, how many do you have? 5. Good. Now imagine the apples are ideas instead. The children laughed. Within minutes, every confused face had transformed into one filled with excitement. Even the librarian watched from a distance, smiling. Ethan noticed something remarkable. Daniel never gave the children the answers. He taught them how to discover the answers themselves. As the children packed their books, one little girl hugged Daniel tightly. Will you be here tomorrow? If God gives me tomorrow, Daniel replied warmly. I'll be right here. After the children left, Ethan approached. I had a feeling I'd find you. Daniel looked up from repairing a torn encyclopedia. I suppose your instincts are as good as people say. Ethan smiled. I've been watching you. Daniel raised an eyebrow. I hope only in a non-creepy way. Both men laughed. I don't understand something, Ethan admitted. You clearly have an education. Daniel remained quiet. You teach children. Silence. You repair books. Still nothing. You speak like a professor. Daniel simply smiled. And yet, Ethan looked around. You sleep on a park bench. Finally, Daniel answered. Life isn't always a straight road. Before Ethan could ask another question, Mrs. Hernandez, the head librarian, approached. Oh, Daniel. She carried a stack of books nearly taller than herself. I was hoping you'd come today. Daniel immediately stood. Let me help. Within minutes, he had repaired loose bindings, organized shelves, and even fixed a jammed book cart that maintenance had struggled with all week. Mrs. Hernandez laughed. I keep telling the city they should hire you. Daniel smiled. They already pay someone else. Yes, but they don't do it half as well. Ethan watched every interaction. Everyone respected Daniel. Not because of his appearance, because of his character. As they left the library together, Ethan made a decision. I have a proposition. Daniel looked curious. I'm listening. I run a foundation. Daniel nodded politely. I know. We sponsor education programs. That's wonderful. I need someone to advise us. Daniel chuckled. I think you've mistaken me for someone qualified. I don't think I have. Daniel's expression became serious. Why me? Because you see people. Daniel looked away. So do many others. No. Ethan shook his head. They look. You notice. Before Daniel could respond, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Two sharply dressed men stepped out. One carried a folder. The other wore a stern expression. They walked directly toward Daniel. Daniel Brooks. Daniel's smile faded. Yes. We've finally located you. Ethan immediately sensed something was wrong. The taller man opened the folder. You've ignored several legal notices. I know. You must appear for tomorrow's hearing. Daniel lowered his eyes. I'll be there. The men handed him an envelope before walking away without another word. Ethan looked at him. What was that about? Daniel stared at the unopened envelope. An old chapter of my life. Can I help? Daniel forced a small smile. I appreciate the offer. But it's something I have to face myself. That evening, Ethan couldn't let it go. He asked his legal advisor to investigate the court notice. The next morning, the report landed on his desk. He opened it. His confident expression disappeared. This can't be right. His attorney nodded. I'm afraid it is. The file revealed that Daniel had spent years fighting a complicated legal battle over an estate and a charitable trust that had been frozen after accusations of financial misconduct. There was no evidence Daniel had stolen anything. But because of one missing witness and years of bureaucratic delays, everything had remained locked in court. His assets, his home, even access to personal documents. Instead of fighting publicly, Daniel had quietly walked away, choosing to live with dignity rather than spend years consumed by anger. Ethan looked stunned. So he isn't poor because he failed. No, he's poor because he refused to compromise his principles. The attorney nodded. According to these records, yes. Later that afternoon, Ethan arrived outside the courthouse. Daniel stood alone on the courthouse steps. No lawyer, no family, no friends, just his old backpack resting at his feet. You came, Daniel said softly. I wasn't going to let you face this alone. Daniel's eyes filled with emotion. You barely know me. I know enough. For the first time since they met, Daniel looked uncertain. I've spent years telling myself I don't need anyone. He paused. Maybe. His voice trembled. Maybe I was wrong. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You once told me that kindness grows best when it's shared. Daniel smiled through misty eyes. I did say that. Then let me share some with you. As they walked toward the courthouse doors, reporters suddenly appeared. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted, Mr. Carter, why are you supporting a man accused of financial fraud? Another reporter called out, do you know this could damage your company's reputation? Ethan stopped walking. Every microphone pointed toward him. Board members had already warned him to stay away from Daniel. Investors feared bad publicity. His own advisors had urged him not to get involved. One sentence could determine everything. Ethan looked at Daniel, who quietly whispered, you can still walk away. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. Then he turned toward the cameras. No. He spoke calmly, but every word carried conviction. I've spent my life judging people by their achievements. Daniel Brooks taught me to judge people by their actions. Until I see proof that contradicts the character I've witnessed with my own eyes, I will stand beside him. The crowd fell silent. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief moment, overwhelmed. For the first time in years, He wasn't facing the storm alone. But neither of them knew that inside the courtroom waited a revelation that would shake everyone to their core and expose the secret Daniel had protected for years. The courtroom was almost silent. Only the faint rustle of legal papers and the clicking of reporters' cameras broke the tension. Daniel stood calmly beside Ethan. His faded blue shirt looked painfully out of place among the expensive suits filling the room. Yet somehow, he appeared to be the most composed person there. The judge adjusted her glasses. Mr. Brooks, after nearly 12 years, this court has finally received new evidence regarding your case. A murmur spread through the gallery. 12 years. An entire chapter of a man's life. Gone. The court clerk wheeled in several sealed archive boxes. Behind them walked an elderly woman using a cane. Daniel froze. His eyes widened. No. The woman smiled through tears. Hello, Daniel. It was Margaret Holloway, the retired attorney everyone believed had passed away years earlier. She had disappeared shortly before the original hearing after suffering a severe stroke while traveling overseas. Unable to communicate for years, she had never been able to testify. Now, after years of rehabilitation, she had returned. The courtroom fell completely silent. Margaret slowly took the witness stand. Her voice was weak, but every word carried undeniable truth. 12 years ago, she began, Daniel Brooks did not steal a single dollar. She looked directly at the judge. He tried to stop the theft. Gasps echoed across the room. She continued. Daniel was the trustee of the Brooks Educational Foundation, created by his late father. Another wave of whispers spread through the courtroom. A foundation? Daniel had never mentioned it. Margaret opened an old leather folder. Inside were handwritten records, bank documents, signed statements, and original trust agreements. They attempted to pressure Daniel into approving illegal transfers from scholarship funds into private accounts. She paused. He refused. The judge leaned forward. And what happened then? They framed him. The room erupted. The judge struck the gavel repeatedly. Order. Margaret continued after the courtroom settled. When I discovered the fraud, I was on my way to present these documents. She looked at Daniel with tears in her eyes. I never arrived. Daniel lowered his head. He had spent 12 years carrying a burden that was never his. The judge reviewed the evidence for nearly an hour. Finally, she looked toward Daniel. This court finds overwhelming evidence that Mr. Daniel Brooks acted with integrity throughout the administration of the Brooks Educational Foundation. She paused. All accusations against Mr. Brooks are hereby dismissed. Daniel closed his eyes. A single tear rolled down his weathered face. The judge continued. Furthermore, she smiled. The foundation and all associated assets shall immediately be returned to Mr. Brooks. Reporters stared in disbelief. One whispered, return. Another quickly searched old financial records. His face turned pale. Oh my goodness. He stood up. The Brooks Educational Foundation is now valued at over $300 million. The entire courtroom gasped. Daniel, the man who had slept on a park bench. The man who repaired library books. The man who gave away his only sandwich. Was not merely wealthy. He was one of the largest private scholarship benefactors in the country. Every camera turned toward him. They were defined by compassion. Every scholarship recipient who graduated returned at least once a year to mentor another student. That had become the foundation's only unwritten rule. Receive kindness, then pass it on. The ripple effect was impossible to measure, yet everyone could see it. Mrs. Lewis, the cafe owner who had quietly fed Daniel for years, never had to worry about keeping her small business open again. Without telling her, the foundation had renovated the cafe and established a community meal program that ensured no child in the neighborhood ever went to bed hungry. When reporters asked who funded it, she simply smiled. A friend who never forgot a sandwich. Mrs. Hernandez officially retired from the library, but she refused to stay home. Instead, she became the director of literacy programs across the city's learning centers. Every time someone praised her work, she laughed. I only gave one man a place to fix books. Then she'd add, he repaired far more than pages. Marcus's life had changed beyond anything he once imagined. The frightened teenager who had stolen a purse now wore a police academy graduation uniform. As he accepted his badge, he searched the audience until he found Daniel. After the ceremony, Marcus walked over. I used to think one mistake defined my future. Daniel smiled proudly. And now, Marcus looked at the badge pinned to his chest. Now I know one act of grace can redefine it. Nearby stood the young mother and little girl from years ago. The little girl wasn't so little anymore. Emily had earned one of the Brooks Foundation's first university scholarships. She was studying pediatric medicine. I want to help children who feel forgotten, she said. Daniel smiled. You already are. Even Ethan Carter had changed. Friends often joked that he smiled far more than he used to. They weren't wrong. The billionaire who once measured success in profits now measured it in possibilities. His company created apprenticeship programs for people rebuilding their lives after homelessness. Corporate bonuses became tied not only to financial performance, but also to community service. Employees volunteered together every month. Investors questioned the new approach at first, but something remarkable happened. Company morale improved. Productivity increased. Communities flourished. Doing good had become good business. One afternoon, Ethan and Daniel walked through the same city park where they had first met. Children chased bubbles across the grass. Families enjoyed picnics. Volunteers served hot meals from colorful tents. Music filled the air. Ethan looked around and smiled. You know? Daniel glanced at him. What? I almost drove past that day. Daniel chuckled softly. But you didn't. I had an important meeting. Daniel laughed. I think you attended a more important one. They both stood quietly for a moment. Then Ethan asked the question he had wondered about for years. When you lost everything, weren't you ever angry? Daniel looked toward the setting sun. Oh, I was. Ethan seemed surprised. You were? Daniel nodded. Every single day. He paused. The difference is, he smiled gently. I refused to let anger become my identity. The breeze carried children's laughter through the park. Daniel continued. I couldn't control what people took from me, but I could control what I gave to the world. Ethan lowered his head. Those words stayed with him long after the conversation ended. Months later, a young journalist interviewed Daniel. She asked the question everyone wanted answered. If you could go back in time and prevent yourself from losing those 12 years. Daniel thought for a long moment. Then he smiled. No. The interviewer blinked. No. If I hadn't lived those years. He looked toward the learning center across the street. I would never have met Mrs. Lewis. He smiled. I would never have repaired books beside Mrs. Hernandez. He laughed softly. I would never have met Marcus. Or Emily. Or Ethan. His eyes glistened. I would have kept my fortune. He paused. But I would have missed my purpose. The interviewer lowered her notebook. She had no more questions. Because Daniel had already given the only answer that truly mattered. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. Sometimes it arrives through someone with great wealth. Sometimes it comes from someone with almost nothing. The truth is, kindness has never depended on a person's income, their appearance, or their social status. It begins with a decision. A decision to notice someone who feels invisible. A decision to offer encouragement instead of judgment. A decision to believe that every human being carries a story we cannot see. Daniel looked poor. People assumed they knew his story. They couldn't have been more wrong. His greatest secret wasn't hidden in a bank account or a legal document. It was hidden in his heart. He had discovered something that many people spend their entire lives searching for. That the richest person in any room is often the one who gives the most away. Not necessarily money, but hope, time, compassion, forgiveness, and love. Imagine what our neighborhoods would look like if every person watching this video chose to perform just one unexpected act of kindness this week. One encouraging conversation, one meal shared, one opportunity offered, one life changed. Because kindness doesn't stop with the person who receives it. Like ripples spreading across a quiet lake, it travels farther than we can ever imagine. Someone you help today may become the person who changes hundreds of lives tomorrow. And it all begins with a single choice. A choice to care. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. If this touched your heart, please like this video. It helps more people discover these inspiring stories. Subscribe for more tales of human kindness that will restore your faith in humanity. And most importantly, look for opportunities in your own life to be someone's unexpected blessing. What act of kindness will you perform this week? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. And remember, you may never know the secret someone is carrying. So choose kindness first. It could change their entire world and yours.